When our best fur friends leave our world, many of us are left wanting one last scritch, one last hug, one last walk together. One Last Network is a space for pet guardians to honor their pets in their senior years and to cope with the days leading up to and after their passing. Here's your host, Angela Schneider, founder of One Last Network and Big White Dog Photography in Spokane, Washington.
Hi, and welcome back to episode 28 of One Last Network, The Art of Remembering Zoe. Zoe is one of Nicole Begley's many loves in this lifetime. She spent too few years in the comfort of Nicole's home in Pittsburgh and then North Carolina after being found by firefighters in a bucket with her litter mates in Puerto Rico. Nicole is the lead educator at Hair of the Dog Academy, a platform that teaches pet photographers, like me, how to master our craft and launch then build our businesses. If it wasn't for Nicole, well, I don't know where a lot of us would be. And many of us met Zoe, an always smiling pup, on the webinars during which we learned the ins and outs of our businesses. Then Zoe died. Very suddenly, very tragically. I remember Nicole publishing a podcast shortly after about how some companies go above and beyond for their customer. She revealed that Chewy sent her a card and flowers when she called them to possibly return an unopened bag of food. She cried. Her sorrow and pain cut through me like a knife. I wanted so badly to reach out through the airwaves and hug her. Today, we are remembering Zoe and many of the other animals to whom Nicole has bid farewell, many of them suddenly and tragically. We honor their lives with their stories. Have a listen. Hello, Nicole Begley. How are you today?
I'm good. Hello, Miss Angela.
We are connected because you are the pet photography guru of the world. Can you tell us a little bit about Hair of the Dog and why
guru?
Yes, guru. Thought leader, influencer, all the things. Tell our listeners who you are and what the Hair of the Dog Academy is, because a lot of our listeners are not pet photographers.
Gotcha. 10-4. So I spent the first 13 years of my career as a zoological animal trainer, which I absolutely loved. And then I became a family and pet photographer in 2010 because I didn't think pet photography could be just a thing. And then by 2015, I was solely a pet photographer. And I also started this little Hair of the Dog blog side gig that has now turned into Hair of the Dog Academy, which is a one-stop shop for mastering your craft and starting and growing your pet photography business. And never in a million years could I have planned for all the twists and turns to be where I am now, but super grateful.
I think that if you weren't in existence with Hair of the Dog, a lot of us would be screwed when it comes to running our pet.
Well, nothing makes me happier than when people have big business wins. That's why I do what I do. It makes me happy.
So you are a pet lover yourself. You have, I think, a couple of horses.
Yes, we're a 2-horse family now because my daughter rides too.
Wow.
We will never be a 3-horse family because then I'll have to live in a cardboard box on the side of the street.
Yeah, I have to confess one thing to you. It wasn't until very recently and researching an interview I did with Courtney Bryson that I learned horses can live 3 decades.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
3 decades, a 30-year-old horse is pretty old. But usually 25 is for sure. Wow. Like a lot of them, like some of the ones at the barn that are still doing like super low level, like just like some flat work or like little cross rails, like easy jobs, are in their early to mid 20s and they're still riding.
Wow.
There was one woman that had a horse at our barn that he was older. She had him really for his whole life. He had one point done the Grand Prix, like the really like 5-foot plus jumps, like the big, fast, high jumps. And he was 28 and he like just didn't want to retire. Like she still rode him not hard, like every once in a while, and like went to show and jumped around like the little 2'3" jumpers just because he was like, yeah, I'm not done. It's the same thing with our dogs. You can, once you know them, you can understand a little bit more. They let us know in different ways of if they want to be doing something or if they're just like, no, please no, I'm done with this.
I very much align with that horse because I could be retired, but I have things I need to get done.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So yeah, 28 was the new 18 for him.
Pretty understandable then that people develop pretty deep connections with their horses.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And you have heart horses just like heart dogs and all those things. My Rocco horse is my current heart horse soulmate animal. I wish I could invite him into my house because he likely would curl up on the couch with me.
Oh.
Yeah, he totally would.
I think I would just go out to the barn and cuddle with him.
I do often.
Okay.
And then he licks me.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast and talk to you is because of Zoe.
Yeah.
Will you tell us about Zoe?
Baby girl.
She came into your life.
Yes. So I was one of the rare pet photographers that started my pet photography business without a dog. I had 2 cats. I had human children before I had dog children. And my rule to myself, well, prior to that, my husband and I worked full-time jobs and it was just, cats were easy, like not being home. I couldn't imagine, especially having a puppy right now. I couldn't imagine having a puppy while working. And, we like to travel and we like to do all those things. It was just our lives were too busy. So a dog just wasn't the right fit at the time. And so then we had kids. And then for many years, I was like, I am not bringing anything else into my life that requires any sort of assistance with going to the bathroom until these kids are like older and potty trained. So that was my rule. Yeah. So once Lauren was 6, Colin was 3. Actually, she might have been like 7 or 8. Oh, I'm trying to think. So we got Zoe. It was May 2016. So Lauren was born 07. She was like 9. So they were like 6 and 9. And I was like, all right, it's time. It's time we get a dog. And I have a love affair of the domestic dog wild type, which is basically Central and South America and island street dogs. What I think all dogs would revert to without any selective breeding, like a 40-pound terrier mix.
That's pretty specific though. Why?
I don't know. Like, why do you love your I can't even pronounce them right. Your big white fluffy dogs.
My Marilla.
Why do you, yeah. Why do you love them? It's just, you love a certain thing. I think maybe because I have traveled quite a bit and like my heart goes out for all those street dogs in Central and South America and just like, I want to save them all. And so this was, what's that?
Didn't you do a shoot down there?
We did a workshop, Barca Rica in Costa Rica. And we got all of our models through, it was a local rescue group run by 2 expats. And actually one of our students adopted one of the dogs and flew her home with her. But anyway, so I knew I wanted to adopt a less fortunate dog. But we did look at the shelters. I knew I wanted to adopt. That was just me. There's nothing against anyone that wants a purebred dog. If you're getting it from a responsible breeder, that's great. That's fine. I knew I wanted to adopt. And we looked at the shelters around us and they were all really big, like pit mixes. And I love a pit mix, but I just didn't want a big dog. I wanted like 30 to 40 pounds. And then anything small was just so nervous. So nervous. And I had 2 little kids. Like I could handle working with a nervous dog and, bringing them along and training them a little bit with my training background. But with an active household with 2 little kids, I was just like, I can't bring a nervous dog into this house because it's just not fair. It's not the right situation. So I had followed this organization called the Sato Project. They rescue dogs in Puerto Rico. there's not enough people on the island to adopt them. So they have like an education, spay, neuter, all that stuff going on the island to try to curb the problem. But then dogs that are there that they rescue, they fly up to the mainland and adopt out here in the States. And so a lot of their dogs come up through New York. I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, couldn't find what we wanted in the shelters locally, got in touch with this organization, and they connected us with Zoe. So I drove to New Jersey and picked her up, and she was 6 months old when we got her. Her background was she was part of what they call the firefighter litter of puppies, because when she was about 2 weeks old, she was found in a bucket of water with all of her siblings by some firefighters, because that's what they do. Not they, that's terrible. That's what happens often in a lot of these countries where they just don't have the spaying, the neutering, like it is what it is. And unfortunately, puppies end up being a nuisance and they just dispose of them, which is awful. And none of us can consider doing that.
We did do it in the 60s and the 70s.
Oh, yeah. Terrible. So she was adopted or, rescued by the project down there. And then she was just a love bug because she was hand raised. So that created some challenges with socializing with other dogs, but she was like, she never met a human she didn't love and like wanted to be on your lap. Like she would put her nose half an inch from your face at all times, never licked, but just like had to be in your space. She was the sweetest. So anyway, we got her at about 6 months old.
So a personality like that is going to make you connect and bond in a way you may not with any other creature, husband, child, horse.
Yeah, although my horse relationship is pretty special. But yeah, no, for sure. She weaseled her way into our hearts really quickly and easily. Yeah.
And she was quite famous. In your webinars,
yes,
guest appearances, cameos, and stuff like that. She became very well known,
right,
in our industry.
Yeah,
but you lost her quite tragically about a year ago. Can you tell us?
Last February, she was totally fine, and then one day my daughter took her on a walk, and then she was like lethargic and just not feeling well, and she would always periodically have episodes where she'd kind of go off eating for a day or two, and then she'd be fine. Usually it was around when she like she destroyed toys in about 30 seconds. And when she got to squeaker before I did, and she ended up ingesting a little bit of the plastic, like, okay, then she would throw up, she'd be better, it's fine. So we were just like, oh, maybe she ate something. What's going on? So the next morning she still wasn't right. So we took her to the vet, and her heart rate was like 330. And so then they sent us down to the cardiologist. Still weren't concerned really. Then they're like, oh, we should be able, basically they had to break the rhythm and get it back in rhythm. And then, she's going to be a lifelong heart patient. Like, fine. Okay, whatever. But they could never fix it. So we had her for about 5 days. Thankfully, she was super dog reactive. So being in a hospital was super stressful for her. And my husband's a vet, so they allowed us to bring her home here and do our triage nursing care here. So we were very thankful to be with her the past couple of the last days. Oh my God. You think that, oh my God, it's been a year. But anyway.
These bursts come out. It is.
So it's like super tragic and fast, and none of us saw it coming. And that was the worst part. And then you were talking about the guilt. And my husband and I are like, oh my God, all these other episodes, was she having that then? Like, could we have caught it then? Should we have taken her then? Yeah, no idea.
You have your own background in animal husbandry. You know that there was nothing you could have done, right?
Yeah. I know. Yeah, but it's still,
it doesn't stop your brain from going
right. Yeah.
Dangerous places.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you manage? I remember that Nicole has a podcast, the Hair of the Dog podcast, where she educates pet photographers like me on various subjects. And I remember you did a solo episode and you broke down. Was that hard?
Well, yeah, this is still hard. It's been almost a year.
What's it like to be a pet influencer and then lose that pet?
Oh, I mean, the one nice thing is I felt like my whole audience, it's not like I was an accountant and lost my dog. You know what I mean? Like everybody I work with knew about Zoe, and everybody that I work with loves dogs as much as I do. So the amount of support that I had was not something necessarily that you would find, I think, in other situations. So I was pretty lucky in that way. I think that was helpful. But yeah, I mean, it sucks no matter what.
No kidding. What other ways did you find support other than your immediate community in pet photography?
Well, I thankfully still was able to stay busy with my horse. I mean, I'm out at the barn probably 20 hours a week, almost every day for about 2 to 3 hours. So, being busy with that, who loved it and is not over the fact that we got another dog is my cat. After Zoe was gone, Emma was like living large. She was like, "This is fantastic. Finally, you guys got rid of that stupid thing. This is awesome." And then I think these animals know more than we like want to give them credit for, because when we brought Cami home, who was our new dog we got this past August, I picked up, because Emma's old. She's like 12, my cat. Maybe even 13 at this point. And so after Zoe passed, we're like, "Oh, why do we keep your food up here on top of the tub? Like, it can go on the ground now, because why do we have to make you old arthritic cat jump up here to get your food? Because there's no dog that's going to eat your food." Well, I picked up her food and I put it back up on the tub. And I swear to God, she looked at me knowing every little bit like, F you. What? For real? For real? You're bringing another dog in this house? And she has been quite cranky ever since. Although we did take her to Florida with us to go visit my mom over Christmas. We were down there usually for like a week and a half to 2, and we hate leaving her home alone, so we just fly down with her. And she didn't hiss at us, attack us. Like she often, you walk past her and she like just attacks your ankle just to show her displeasure. She was like so happy. I'm like, "I'm sorry, Emma. I'm really sorry."
I have only ever been a one dog house.
Yeah.
We had cats when I was a kid, always dogs. We went through phases where we would have 2 cats, but I remember coming home from Newfoundland, and Priscilla was our black cat.
Uh-huh.
And she must have been 15 or 16 at the time. I don't have an affinity for cats. And I would look at Priscilla when I would come home on vacation from Newfoundland, and I would go, "Are you still alive?" And I swear to God, she would look at me, she would go, "Ah!" And I would hear her saying, "Fuck off."
100%. Yeah, no, they know. They know. I love cats. I don't think I'll ever not have cats. They crack me up. But yeah, poor Emma. So yeah, we kept busy because we had, then one.
Yeah.
Now since then we've added a horse. Mm-hmm. My daughter had a hamster. Now we've added like 5 fish, which actually I sent out my Christmas card in December, and the PS was, because I signed it from, Brett, Nicole, Lauren, Colin, Cami, Emma, Rocco, Al, Cheesecake, the hamster, Palmer, our rescue snail, and then PS, no more animals in 2023. Well, lo and behold, before the new year, my daughter adopts 5 fish from her friend that's moving and can't take the fish with her. So we have 5 fish now too.
Are you like Dr. Doolittle or something?
I don't know. We're something here. I mean, we have a rescue snail. We found this snail. My daughter manifested the snail, first of all, because we had snails in the backyard, and she like started looking up about them, and they're actually really fascinating. Like they can basically, I don't know what the proper term is, but they have both like male and female sexual organs, so they can like go back and forth and like have babies by themselves and like all these crazy things. Insane. So she started telling me about these snails. I'm like, "That's fascinating." She's like, "I want a pet snail." I'm like, "We're not getting a pet snail." So my daughter likes plants because she likes to nurture things, apparently. And she had this palm tree, like a potted palm thing in her room that she got at Lowe's. And she had the thing for like 6 months. And then it's winter. And she's like, hey, Mom, is Dad home yet? No, not yet. Okay. Mom, is Dad home? Not yet. When will we be home? Like, what's going on? She's like, I need to talk to you guys. I'm like, oh, what? Like, my daughter's at the time was 14. I'm like, oh, what? This sounds serious. Oh, God. And then she tells me, she's like, oh, I found the snail. I can't let it go outside because like it's probably just gonna die. I didn't think it was alive, but like if it's sleeping, you kind of like put some like damp water on it, like a wet paper towel over it, and it'll kind of like wake it up from hibernation. And it's alive. And I don't want to put it outside because it'll just die because it's cold and it might be invasive. So my husband and I are like, fine, and keep the snail. So anyway, we have this little pet snail that went from like this little teeny tiny translucent shell because it was like starving and dying on this plant forever to this big giant snail we've had well over a year now, and named Palmer because he's found on a palm tree.
Nicole Begley had a farm.
Yes. There are different levels. Oh, this would be terrible. There are, of course, different levels of attachment where like the horse and Zoe and the cat are to the top where, when time comes for the Palmer, it's, because you don't have the interaction that you do with our dogs.
Did having all of your animals around in the aftermath of Zoe's death help?
Yeah, it did. And actually, I had to go teach a pet photography workshop 2 weeks after we lost Zoe.
Yeah, you did.
Which surrounded by how many? We have about 36 models. So 36 dogs that as a collective group we photograph during that 10-day period. And there was one that looked like a little Zoe. And I did really great until then I saw that dog. And I was just like, can I please just buy your dog for a minute? I might steal it. I'll give it back before I fly home because I can't take it with me. But can I keep this dog for a week, please? But it was actually cathartic. I actually enjoyed being around the dogs and photographing them. Like some people, I think, go to this, I can't put myself there. But I had to, like, canceling the workshop was not an option. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, helpful.
It's hard for me to imagine myself in that position, although Bella turns 9 in March and I have to start accepting some realities.
Right.
I think picking up my camera in the days after will be vital.
Mm-hmm.
It's therapy.
Yeah, it is.
Because
I was going to say, just for me too, it wasn't like photographing I don't know. It was like the photographing wasn't hard. Mm-hmm. And like looking at other people's dogs didn't trigger like the sad, you know what I mean? Like the only part that was like, oh man, was that little dog that just was her little doppelganger.
Right.
Yeah.
And you didn't jump into the idea of another dog right away.
Well, we had too much travel coming up that I was like, I can't get a dog and expect to have it trained in 2 weeks to like live in this house. Like we need
thinking about it though, like
yes, like we actually would have been ready. We like my daughter and I were looking at Pet Finder like within 10 days because we were just like, we can help another one.
I think when you're a dog person or a pet person, mm-hmm. you need to have a pet.
Yeah.
And some people take breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Pets are a big responsibility and it can be difficult to find a dog sitter. Mm-hmm. It can be difficult to want to trust anyone with your dog. And I'm speaking of personal experience. We don't travel together.
Yeah.
Unless Bella is with us.
Mm-hmm.
Some people take breaks so they can go travel,
Yeah.
have a little bit of a freer life. I was 9 days,
Yeah.
so no one will ever hear any judgment from me on how quickly
Oh, yeah. No, it's,
you
and
bring a new dog into the house.
right. Yeah. Everyone does that at their right time. We would have been ready much earlier, but yeah, it was just, and like for Zoe, it was easy for us to travel because we had people that we trusted and we had a whole network of people that could handle, and watch her, and loved to have her when we were gone. Nobody ever wanted to give her back.
That speaks to my
Now with the new one, they're like, here, glad you're here.
yeah.
Oh, Cami, she's getting better. I have to remind myself of my poor daughter because she grew up, and she doesn't remember Zoe peeing all over the carpet, like all the puppy times with Zoe because she was little.
Right.
And I'm like, it took Zoe a while to get into the routine of how it works in this house too.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the biggest fears people have when they're thinking about adding a new dog is that they're replacing
Right.
the dog that they have lost. Has Cami replaced Zoe?
No.
Right.
No.
Tell us about that.
Oh, it's just, they're just different, it's, and I think it's people probably, I would imagine, would really only have that fear the first time. But man, I've had so many freaking animals in my life. I mean, even my full-time job for my first 13 years out of college was taking care of animals. And, like, I'll never forget one of the hardest losses we had there was, it was when West Nile first came to the States, and was running rampant. Oh gosh, when was that? It must have been early 2000s. So I was working at an aquarium, and I was working with harbor and gray seals, and we lost one of our seals to West Nile, and it was awful. I'm already right here. It's been 20 years. So I'm like, oh, and it wasn't even like my animal, but I worked with it. I trained it, like you have a relationship with these animals. Yeah. So when you have this many animals in your life, you have your fair share of heartbreak, but it's always worth it.
What is Cami doing to help you manage your grief journey?
No, she's just hysterical and then insane. So Zoe had loved people, loved anyone she met at any point. She would lose her mind when FedEx would come, because obviously all dogs get the memo when they come into this earth that FedEx will murder your family, so you must bark excessively at them. Yes. That's part of their soul's contract with this particular lifetime. But anyway, Zoe was dog reactive. She didn't used to be, but she actually got attacked on leash 3 times in her short life. And the first time happened, it was like February, because it was freezing cold. My husband was out of town. I had to take her out. It was before we had the backyard fenced. So I had to take her out for a quick walk on the street before like bedtime pee at like 10 o'clock at night. It's like 10 degrees outside. I have my giant coat on. I'm taking her out just like 2 houses like down, just like pee, let's go back inside. And then there's this guy walking these 2 dogs. No idea who this guy was. Never seen him before or since. And like, I knew everybody in my neighborhood. Wasn't a big neighborhood. And he's walking these 2 dogs, and the one starts barking, and then Zoe starts barking back. And then, he probably had gloves on, and one slipped out of, he dropped the leash of one accidentally, I'm sure. And the dog came over, and, Zoe and that dog got in a tuffle. Zoe wasn't hurt physically, but like it left mental fear scar that was really hard to work over, and we'd start to make progress. And then because she would overreact, like other dogs would then up the ante. And then if there was another time we were walking and somebody had their dog off leash, and like, it's okay, it's friendly. I'm like, mine's not. And then dog comes over like all friendly, but then Zoe's losing her mind, and then that dog's like, well, shit, I better lose my mind too. And I'm like, come get your dog. And then there was a third time Lauren was walking Zoe, and totally fine. And it was like in a neighborhood, and some like grandma was watching like some human children, and the one like toddler opened their door and their dog ran out and then ran over to Zoe. And then Zoe, escalates, and then that dog escalates. So the one nice thing now about like, oh, I could take Cami for a walk, and I don't care what dogs I see. Because when I'd take Zoe for a walk, I couldn't take her on the greenway because it was too skinny. And I was just like, it's going to be a disaster if we meet another dog. It was just a constant hen on swivel of like, where are dogs? And she was okay at a certain point. And like, we were working on that, her kind of threshold of what she could handle. But it was never a relaxing walk. But now Cami is, when we got her, so her story is she is a street dog from Tortola, British Virgin Islands, ended up at a rescue here in Charlotte. I saw her ridiculous ears and that she was from Tortola, which is one of my most favorite islands on the planet. Cool. I'm like, well, apparently you need to be our dog. But she was super nervous. I don't know what her history was before she came to this rescue at 4 months. I don't think anything good. She's really nervous of people. But of course, she loves us, crawls all over us. But we're learning how to meet new people and not, it becomes the classical conditioning of like, hey, new people are here. You get good things. They're not going to kill you. So we're working on it. But
well, where do you sit on the idea of you don't get the dog you want, you get the dog you need?
Well, I mean, I think that's just about everything in life, like. It is what it is, and all roads lead you to your highest good, and all roads have something to teach you,
Mm-hmm. There is one hill that I will die on, and that is leash your damn dog.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah. And like, if you're out on the walk and you want them to run around, that's cool. But as soon as you see another dog, recall them, put them on a leash.
Yeah.
Yes.
As difficult as it can be, is it therapeutic to talk about Zoe and tell stories?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She was the best girl.
What is your favorite Zoe story?
Oh, man, there's a lot. I think the best was every morning she would wake up and come running into, she slept with the kids. I had her sleep with me once, and she was a dog. Cami's the same, where it has to be physically touching you at all times. And I'm like, no, you can sleep on the bed. You cannot be physically touching me every second of the night. So I was like, kids, you get her back. No, I'm keeping the cat. So anyway, she would sleep with the kids, and every morning you could tell as soon as the kids got up, because you would hear gallop, gallop, gallop. She'd come running into my room, launch herself onto the bed, and then immediately curl up in a little tiny ball on top of me until I was going to get up. And I get up, and then she's like, oh, the cat's here. Because the cat always slept in our room. And every morning she'd run up to the cat and she'd be like, today you're going to play with me. And every morning the cat's like, hell no. Bat, bat, bat. Oh, why? Every day. Every day she woke up just loving the world and expecting today was going to be different. Today was her day to play with the cat. That was my favorite.
One of my educators says that once you have experienced grief, you are now a grief expert. So congratulations, you're a grief expert.
Super, thanks.
It's one of the guarantees in life, especially as a pet lover too, right?
Right.
So what is the one thing you have learned on your grief journey that you would leave with our listeners?
Oh, I think part of it's interesting because I'm trying to think, man, almost all of my, this is like maybe a lesson that my soul needs to learn. Thinking of all the animals that I've lost suddenly, like the crow that I worked with really closely at the aviary was killed by a wild great horned owl one night. The seal died suddenly. Zoe died suddenly. My old dog as a kid died suddenly. My old cat just disappeared when she was old and died suddenly. So I don't think I've ever actually had a pet that I care about get old and die naturally. I guess my two cats did. Whew. But anyway, Yeah, I've had a lot of sudden loss, which is like a whole different kind of thing because it hits you like a freaking truck. I mean, it does no matter what, but I at least feel like when your dog is getting older and like they're sick or they're getting older, like anything that you're losing, it gives you a little bit of time to start to prepare mentally for that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when it's so sudden, you're just like, stop. Last week was normal. Now nothing's normal. And yeah, it's like hard to deal with.
Has it given you a greater appreciation for life in the moment then?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How do you do that? How do you live life in the moment as Nicole Begley?
Gratitude practices of any kind. And I've gotten really good at trying to self-regulate my thoughts of like, hey, I'm feeling shitty. Why? What am I thinking about? How is this serving me? How can I turn this around? So it becomes just really keeping an eye on what thoughts are running through your head and stopping it every once in a while. I'll be like, hey, this is a good moment, and even when Cami is barking at a leaf falling outside and I'm like trying to concentrate, I'm like, okay, this will not last forever. I still love you, even though right now I want to strangle you. But I'm glad we have you. Look how cute you are with those ears. I can't be mad at you. But yeah, just yeah, the gratitude, and if you can't think of something you're grateful for, you're not thinking hard enough, because I think anyone listening to this podcast probably has a phone, which means they probably have a house, which means they probably have running water, which means, that they probably have a bed to sleep on. So, you can start with those basic things if you're having trouble finding gratitude.
The little things.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Thank you. And also, of course, airplane tickets and chocolate martinis.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's always there.
All right, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us on One Last Network today. It's been such a treat talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
I finally got to hug Nicole. Last week, I was in Orlando, Florida for Global Pet Expo as a guest of Animal House Stock Photography. I was there to network for my pet photography business and hopefully enter the world of commercial work. But I also snuck in some time to meet potential guests for our podcast. And today, I have a list of 10 or so people that I can't wait to talk to bring you information about not only pet loss grief, but how we can help our senior pets age comfortably and happily. Next week, Jessica Wasik of Bark and Gold Photography in Pittsburgh is back to share with us the story of the Izzy Fund, a group that provides financial support to dog lovers who encounter health diagnoses that require big bank accounts. I'm Angela Schneider, owner of Big White Dog Photography in Spokane, Washington, and your host at One Last Network, signing off to go get some Bella snuggles. Listen to One Last Network on whichever podcast platform you prefer. We're on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you have a friend who might be interested in our content, make sure you share us with them. Thanks for listening.